International Affairs Editor Leela Jacinto joins me now on set to tell us more. Leela, good to see you. So, what are the stakes here, and why should we be paying attention to local elections in a tiny Pacific island?
Well said. I mean, this group of islands is half the size of Taiwan, but it is big in terms of the stakes because, as we have seen, these elections, which are provincial elections, local provincial elections, are key to determining the political future of this archipelago and its relations with France. So, basically, New Caledonia is overseas territory of France. It's under the UN, it's one of 17 what are called non-self-governing territories. And these include islands. They're mostly islands like Guam and Diego Garcia. So these were all islands that were seized by Western powers in the heyday of colonialism, and now is starting the decolonization process. The stakes for France are pretty big. They're economic. New Caledonia is the world's fourth largest producer of nickel, which is very important in the green transition technologies. France also gets maritime territorial waters, which drives the blue economy. But most important for France is geostrategic, because with these footholds in the Pacific, France calls itself an Indo-Pacific power. It's not just a middle power, and it is an Indo-Pacific. It's a power in a region, the Indo-Pacific, where China has growing ambitions. So that's the stakes. Now, the rub for France is, if it were to be called an Indo-Pacific power, critical to that is giving the indigenous residents of New Caledonia a say in their governance. France does not have a problem with that. What is a challenge is the mechanics of how these residents of these islands have a say. And that is the cause of what has been years of political upheaval and rounds of negotiations.
So, why has it been so difficult to find a political solution to New Caledonia's future?
Well, if I have to put it in a nutshell, I put it down to the two Ds: decolonization and demographics, right? Under decolonization, people need to have a say in their governance and a say in their future, which is why France has had three referendum on the status since 2018. Demographics come in because the residents of these islands are basically divided into indigenous Melanesian Kanak people, which form around 41% of the population. Then you have the people of European origin from France, which is around 24% of the population. The rest are people who have arrived from the other islands in the areas, because this is a relatively rich island since it's French territory. And there's also a Chinese diaspora. And a recent Australian study found that the diaspora is being used by Beijing as part of its much broader foreign interference activities in the Pacific region. Now, when it comes to demographics, it gets very tricky because the Kanak population does not want to lose the stakes that it has with new arrivals from France, these new groups forming, in the economic and business elites. So it becomes very critical. What is the electoral roll? Who is registered to vote? Under accords that were set in 1998, the electoral rolls were frozen. And every move to open up the electoral vote sparks a backlash. And the two Ds, decolonization and demographics, really came together in an explosive mix in May 2024, when we saw these riots that erupted. The initial cause was protests, and they were protests against a measure that would increase the voter registration to new arrivals from mainland France. That very quickly went into a riot where what became apparent was the inequalities of resources and wealth distribution, because a lot of the people who were rioting were people of the Kanak groups in the impoverished slums, and they attacked the symbols of economic power. So what France is trying to achieve here is twofold. On the one hand, it does not want to lose its very strategic foothold in the Pacific, but on the other hand, it does not want a very restive 40% of the population. And what France hopes with these elections is to pave the way for future negotiations where we can come to some sort of agreement which will balance autonomy, some amount of self-rule within France in a special arrangement.
All right.